什么是真正的智慧？我们人以为的智慧就是说 prove I am right，但是很可能更高的智慧是说 I admit I might be
wrong。Hello， 大家
，Hello，
欢迎来到又一集的美乐地家庭。今天呢，我想到一个比较特别的主题，因为我最近开始读了 Jordan Peterson 的第2本书。It's 12 More Rules for Life. If you've been following me for a while, you would know that I actually did a whole video series on his first book, 12 Rules for Life. 因为我觉得他的书非常深刻，然后很有帮助，也很有意义。所以呢，他第2本书出来的时候，我就赶快就去买了，所以很开心就开始读它。所以我读完了 Chapter 1, and I want to talk about the first rule in this book and ask you guys what your thoughts are on this rule. Rule number 1 goes, do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievement.Denigrate 就是 like look down on or degrade 或者轻看，对，不要去轻看传统，同时也不要去轻看创新。
那所以他现在讲的是两个方面的。其实我想这个题目其实就是讲到说传统 tradition 跟这个叫 progressive 保守派自由派，那到底这个中间怎么平衡？那我后来就想到一件事，我说那耶稣到底是哪一边？
Yeah, like if you ask the people 当地的人，他们会说 Jesus is a radical.
Very 他似乎是他想要推翻很多的 tradition 的东西，但是呢他却又讲了一句话，他说我来不是要推翻你们，其实我是要来 consolidate， 或者要来
fulfill the law，
来完成成全。这个就很有意思。其实我觉得这跟年纪有关。你说我很radical， OK， maybe 我现在还是相当 radical， 但是比起我年轻的时候，我现在已经是非常的保守 ，maybe， 或者是我比较能够有一个 balance 的 view，maybe I don't know。但我觉得这个还是跟年纪、跟你的知识、你的成长有关，
还有一些经历上。
And then generally people become more conservative as they grow older. Yeah, I mean like John Adams who said, if you're young and conservative, then you have no heart. But if you're old and liberal, then you have no brain.
其实我在想，每一个年轻人every generation， 他们都会觉得这个 old generation 对他们来讲都是一个拦阻。Yeah, 他们都会觉得这些东西我都要把它突破，不管这个 old generation， 其实他们也曾经把他们的前面的那个把它突破。那 in a way 我觉得也不是不好，就是说本来就应该要一直不断的进步嘛，
是。
但是我是觉得就是说就是看做法啦。你今天是用这种 revolution 的方法，就我要把你革命掉，而且这革命是把你杀掉，把你烧掉，把你破坏掉，我觉得这个是不是很明智的做法。耶稣他也没有说他要来领导一群人来 rebel against， even 就是连那个罗马他们来统治他们，甚至用很残忍的方法，耶稣好像也没有说来跟随我，然后我们来打倒这样子。好像我是觉得啦，一个成熟的做法就是我们还是要回到自己，就是我到底我在追求的是什么，我要追求的是那个真正的那个 value， 那个 value 也不是 traditional 的 conservative 的，也不是 liberal 的， there is something the heart the core thing，那你要追求的是那个东西，而不是说你要去推翻这个东西。
是 because it becomes so anti this, you forget what you're actually for.
Yeah.
我刚刚就想到，我说你刚刚讲 traditional 传统的跟创新的我觉得有时候这个界限我们都不知道怎么去定义了。耶稣说我们不要把那个新酒放在旧皮袋的里面。那什么叫做定义叫做新酒，什么叫做旧皮袋？有的时候其实我们在传统里面也真的其实很多的旧皮袋，但是创新的里面你如果没有一直在 transformation， 一直在更新而变化，好像你一下子也是变成了一个旧的了。好，所以这个旧跟新，传统跟创新，这个到底怎么定义？我刚刚就在想，我说真的必须再回到一个真理的里面，好像是必须要有一个真理在那边做主，不然的话其实所有东西都还是都变成旧的。 然后一直坚持，然后就反而就破坏了。
呀，我觉得还有一点很重要哈，就是说有两种力量，在这个创世纪里面已经讲了，就是有2棵树嘛，
对，
一个叫知识善恶树，一个叫生命树嘛。那知识善恶树，我觉得全世界的人现在都中了这个 poison， 中了这个毒啊，知识善恶，就是说我是比较好的，我是对的，然后我一定要把你这个错的把你干掉，把你除掉哈。然后排除掉，然后我这个对的才会出来。可是生命树讲的是关系不管你是新的是旧的 generation to generation 一代一代，我们能够有一个传承，有一个创新，能够往上建造。所以我们不会因为你是创新的，我们就把你，或者你把我们推翻掉，或者我们把你压下去，而是说我们会希望说，你可以站在我们的肩膀上，我们把你捧上去，让你可以看得更高更远。就是说如果我们都在知识善恶树里面的话，我们会很害怕你的创新，你也很厌恶我们的保守。但是如果我们是在生命树的里面，那我们就会觉得说，我们很希望说，孩子，我希望你比我更好呀。那我们不会觉得你对我们是一个威胁，你也不会看我们是一个拦阻这样子。
我觉得现在的社会真的好像把我们都画一个鸿沟。
对，
你是属于创新的，我是属于传统的，那我们就永远好像变成永远你是创新，我永远是传统。
对。
I think the problem with 现在我们很多人的思想 is like when you already think you know what's right and wrong， 就是吃知识善恶树，你已经没有 appetite for the truth because you already think you know everything. It's like you're so in love with what you know， 你没办法说I'm a seeker of truth. And that means I'm open to my own idea being changed. I'm open to my own mind being transformed constantly. Like I can constantly renew my mind.
我在一个教育论坛里面我听到他们有一种教学法叫 IB 那它里面就讲，他说教育的目的让我很 surprise。他讲他教育的目的就是要让每一个人能够 somehow 能够去承认说他自己有可能是错的。
对，
其实每一个人都有他们自己的 truth， 每一个人都有他们自己的 history， 有他们的很多他们想要去 prove 的东西。但是你把这群人放在一起的时候，他们能不能够就是很好好的去谈一谈，就是说有没有可能我所以为的有可能是错的，然后我们要怎么样来看待这个世界，而不是说我要把你消灭掉。
对，我上次听到这个也好 surprise。他说他教导这些孩子们就是一个题目，就说我可能有错我说哇，
而且要能够承认下来。这个其实你刚刚在讲智慧的时候，我在想什么是真正的智慧。我们人以为的智慧就是说 prove I am right，但是很可能更高的智慧是说 I admit I might be wrong， 能够看见自己的盲点。我觉得这个才是真正的智慧。
It's like when you're young, you think you know everything, but as you grow older, you realize how much you don't know.
That's your wisdom.
So when it comes to rules, a lot of us equate, following the rules as being a good person. 就是what does it mean to be good? It means that you can conform and you can follow the rules. But we know, like, just because you're a rigid rule follower doesn't necessarily mean you're actually a good person. So how do we determine when to conform and when not to conform? So he says, so Jordan Peterson 说 follow rules, right? Except when doing so undermines the purpose of those self-same rules, in which case take the risk of acting in a manner contrary to what has been agreed upon as moral. So like 就是像你说 behind every law, behind every rule is the heart of the rule, why it was put there in the first place. Like for example, the Sabbath for the Jews, 安息日. Jesus broke some of the rules of the Sabbath, right? And so Pharisees 看到是说 you're not a good Jew. You're not a good person. You broke the rules of the Sabbath. And then what did Jesus say? He said, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. And then Jesus later said, I came to fulfill the Sabbath. I came to fulfill the law. So what's the difference? Is the Pharisees were the rigid rule followers, but they forgot what the heart of the rule was. But Jesus came to fulfill, because he actually understood the rule better than they did. He actually understood it even better than they did on a level they didn't understand in their heart. So he actually fulfilled it even when it looked like on the outside He was breaking it. 就像 Jesus said, you know, he's like, on the Sabbath, if your sheep falls into a ditch, will you not pick it up?
Yeah.
If you see someone wounded or their hand crippled, will you not heal them? 即使 on the Sabbath, when doing those things kind of break Sabbath rules.
不管你刚刚讲到传统还是创新，我觉得其实真的最主要的就还是关系。不是一直去分辨对啊错啊，这个是那个的什么的，然后就反而把关系给破坏掉了。那时候真正其实我觉得最伤心。我们在里面的人都受伤，那神也很伤心。
所以其实我觉得这个律法主义 conservatives versus liberals 其实我觉得两边都有律法主义的问题 this sort of rigidness to 我们自己的想法 and so maybe the antidote to that is grace 就是我们能不能够对彼此就是有恩典 maybe we think differently maybe we're on different sides of the political spectrum but are we able to show grace? That's the gospel. The gospel isn't conservative or liberal. Jesus was considered a radical, right? Like we just said, back in the day, he broke rules, but he fulfilled the law at the same time. So it's like the gospel isn't considered liberal or conservative. The gospel is about grace. So whether you fall in whichever part of the spectrum, I'm able to show grace to you because you're my brother, you're my sister. And 就是这个关系我们还是可以保持。我们都是在这个大家庭里面，就是不要为了这些 ideas end up sacrificing your relationships with other people. 我觉得这个就是 too high a price. It's not worth it. Don't sacrifice relationships with people for your idea. Sacrifice the idea instead. Pick your sacrifice. Don't sacrifice the people who really love you, who really care about you. If your ideology requires you to do that, then sacrifice the ideology. It's not worth it. So I think we'll end it there. 谢谢你们 join me for this conversation. Yeah, thanks for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.
可以来吃冰淇淋了。
Okay.